Hey, it's Jeff. Welcome to the first installment of the 1600 ChessTempo series. Ideally, this is meant to help people stuck at 1600 ChessTempo Standard to improve and reach 1700. There are some thought process tips. Try to take one or two things and focus one at a time until you can do them subconsciously. And over time, you'll have a lot of new tools that you can use to solve tactics more efficiently. And it'll be interesting to see how well I'm able to follow this, or if I consistently skip over some of these steps in my solving. But after the puzzle, for sure, I'll take another look at the thought process tips as a whole and try to compare with what I did if I didn't go one by one through each bullet point. So mainly keep it as a reference, but do notice if something in there, in hindsight, made a puzzle much more simpler. So without further ado, let's get started. Also, I'll just note for this first video, the average time, the median time, or maybe even the average too, for these puzzles at this level is about 4 minutes. So I'm gonna think up to 4 minutes, and if I don't have it by then, I'll just guess. But okay, so let's start. So I'll scan the board and see what's going on. I do see that that bishop is hanging on b2. And I see that, okay, if rook takes e8, we have a rook, so that's defended. There's a knight check, knight f6, but it can be taken by many pieces. So the question really is, what's wrong with taking the bishop? Because it feels like we're just winning material. Although I guess we're down a piece, so they have two minor pieces, we just have one. So if we take back, it's pretty much leaving us as even. Yeah, so I'm gonna look at this thought process tips. I skipped something, so really I just see that undefended bishop there. I don't see any strong ideas for the opponent. And it's really just deciding, do I take this bishop or not? And maybe it's just an obvious move where you take the bishop and then they do something else and then there's more of a tactic. But I'm really trying to see if there's anything better than taking the bishop on move one. Oh, taking the queen. So yeah, I am super blind. So in the beginning, thought process tips, scan the board. Undefended pieces. I did notice the bishop, but this queen on c7 is also undefended. And I could definitely see taking the bishop is going to be wrong, and it might be the most common mistake because they just see a free piece. But since we're down material, which if you want, you can count up the material as an optional first step. Some do recommend it. I've recommended it in the past, and it definitely helps out. But I'm just gonna go ahead and take this queen. Well, okay, so if we take the queen, remember the check opponent's resources. So I have a notes on that. So if we take on c7, what's black's best move? Well, they have bishop d4, pinning our queen to the king. And so in that situation, are we just giving the material back? I think after knight takes c7, bishop d4, we have rook e8 check. And so if rook takes e8, then our queen is no longer, well, I guess it's pinned in a way, but it can take d4 because the rook took our rook on e8. And if they just move the king, so after knight c7, bishop d4, rook e8, let's say king f7, if we just take the rook on d8, yeah, they can take our queen, we take back, but then we're up material in that sense. So it's very important to see that if you're going to play knight c7, that you see that bishop d4 seems to be winning the queen back, but you can calculate further and see that there's nothing to be afraid of here. So, and I think some people, they might see okay, we're after knight c7, they go bishop d4, so they're just going to get the material back, so we'll just go for the bishop in the first place and take on b2, but as we said before, if you count up the material, you end up just being even. So I'm pretty sure it's knight c7, and we've used more than 4 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and play it. Okay, and that was the right answer. Now, okay, so let me go to the analysis board. And also I have my typical mistakes, as always, that I've referenced on some of my earlier ChessTempo videos. So I'm just gonna go through some of the lines that I was talking about. So at first I had considered just bishop takes, and yeah, so if rook takes, this knight is okay, but there's not really much going on. It's pretty much what it seems like white's still winning in this position a little bit. Maybe there was an alt, I don't know. But for some reason the engine says, sorry. The engine says this is winning for white still. But it does say, okay, yeah, so in this situation, knight takes c7 is +8, queen takes b2 is +2. And so after this, they have bishop d4. And let's say you didn't know what to do here. You just took like that. Now this isn't completely winning for white anymore. But here you gotta find rook e8. And then after rook takes e8, you can take the bishop. And if the king moves, you take the rook. And now you're up material. So that's what I was calculating to be able to confidently play knight takes c7. Now, okay, so the most common mistake was queen takes b2 by far. And really, nothing else that made much sense was played. So queen c2 and knight f6 were the other two moves. So in this position, knight f6, which I did look at and I said, okay, they could just take the material, so that's not really doing anything. And the other move was queen c2. So after queen c2, I don't know if you're trying to go here and do something on the next turn, but it's definitely too slow. Not going to. Also, the queen can just move out the way. They can even throw in this bishop d4 check still. So it was really just a decision on seeing that you can take this queen and that you do it, and also extra credit if you can spot this move and rook e8, or if you were going to go for taking this free bishop, which doesn't really gain you a bishop like you think it was. So, okay, so the typical mistakes. So what does queen takes b2 indicate? Well, it overlooks so I almost overlooked queen c7. Like, it took me a lot longer than it should have to see that I could just take this free queen. So that was my first mistake. But someone who takes this bishop probably didn't see that. Well, they either didn't see that you could take the queen, or like I said, they were discouraged after seeing bishop d4 and didn't find rook e8. In which case, they kind of missed a candidate move for themselves further down the line as well. So I think it all has to do with missing your own ideas for this one instead of seeing the opponent's greatest defense. Oftentimes it will be a position where you need to spot your opponent's best defense to solve the tactic correctly and not go for some obvious idea. So this was the first problem in the series, got it right. And And yeah, hope it was helpful. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.